Welcome to our discussion, Protecting Email, the Cyber Weapon of Choice, sponsored by Optiv and Proofpoint here on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com. My guests today are Ping Look. She's Executive Advisor for Security and Awareness at Optiv. Bhagwat Swaroop is Executive Vice President and General Manager for Email Security at Proofpoint. Sean Lang is Chief Information Security Officer at the Library of Congress. And Cameron Dixon from the National Cybersecurity Assessments and Technology Services Branch at the Homeland Security Department. Great to have you all. Our topic today in general is email. And email is one of those durable products, durable functions, durable services that no matter what else comes in the way of channels of communication among people and between agencies and the public and among agencies, email is still king. And therefore, I guess we can understand that email is still the primary vector for so much cybersecurity mischief. So why don't we begin by just getting from the government people to begin with an idea of what does the email picture look like right now in terms of cybersecurity, because it's a moving target, very different, I would say, from 5 years ago, certainly from 10 years ago or before that, those of us that can remember the dawn of email. What does it look like today? Why don't we start with you, Sean?
One of the key parts of our organization is making sure email is flowing, whether it's messages from members of Congress or the American public. We have to make sure the email is flowing, and with that, make sure that all the messages get in. Unfortunately, with that, you see lots of malicious actors sending anything from crimeware to various advanced persistent threats via email. So it used to be documents, links. Now it's just about anything that can be weaponized within a message.
Interesting, because people forget the Library of Congress. They forget the of Congress part often. And you are a place where Congress routinely checks in, and we need this book, we need that document. Sometimes the members even come to different facilities to do research, or their staff does. And so is there email coming specifically from Congress? I'm just curious about this. That is anything but routine or simple requests for documents or books or whatever they might need in their research?
Yes, actually the Congressional Research Service handles research for members of Congress from anything that they could want to know about. So routinely they'll have emails come in from various members of Congress asking, I need information on this topic. And CRS has to respond to those requests in a timely manner. So it's important that A, they receive the request, so we can't be so protective that the request gets
into the spam box.
Exactly, or that there's some kind of delay. So they're expecting an answer rather quickly, and we have to be responsive. Of course, we do also have to worry about a malicious actor using that trust to send in malware or some other piece of.
Or being an imposter, saying this is Senator XYZ, and it's really somebody from Russia or who knows where.
Correct.
Okay, and Cameron, Homeland Security, and we're going to get into depth about the nature of the binding operational directive with respect to the DMARC standard, but that's for later on in the conversation. In general, Homeland Security protects civilian systems in the government, works with DoD. Email is a big topic.
So we tend to think of email as the universal file transfer protocol. It is the easy way where I can send and receive messages anywhere. It may be more difficult to set up some kind of file share or even something external, but we tend to presume that what we send gets delivered. That has both offensive and just regular normal reception of information properties. So that can be weaponized, as Sean was saying, both within the email itself or links that you're trying to incentivize people to click on. Those can be really damaging, but we still have this anticipation that what's sent to us we want to receive. And so for those that are in the flow of that email as part of the delivery chain, it's a delicate balance. Do we block this email? Do we not deliver it at all? Do we just mark it as spam? Particularly for those receivers that are expecting something, it can be really frustrating. I know it was sent. Where is this? Where did it land? And so agencies have to play a real delicate balance sometimes in figuring out where that balance lies.
Yeah, too, and I guess part for many agencies that need to communicate with the public, I'm thinking of the IRS, but there are others, they simply don't use email for that channel because of the opportunity for mischief and insertion of spoofing and so on.
That's right. Often they don't email directly, but they certainly have the capability of doing so. One of the things that's important to understand, I think, is that the reason that the government operates is for the citizens. We do that so that we can serve them and we can provide them services. And if the capability of sending an email to them appears to be malicious, that impacts citizen trust. We want them to trust the government, because if they can't trust us, the government really cannot function. Mm-hmm. So we really want to incentivize careful and thoughtful deployment of security in email, such that when it's received by citizens, they know that this is legitimate.
Yeah, and I think that's really the crux of almost everything having to do with email these days. And Bhagwat, that's your specialty at Proofpoint. And looking across the customer base, maybe compare commercial state of affairs with federal or public sector state of affairs, because I think everyone at some level is battling with email security issues.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of interesting things here. One is we see billions of messages every day, and email is really how business communication is done, while there are other means as well. And we see the digital communication right now is going through a trust crisis. People, if they can't trust that the right content and sender is sending the message, that they can't really conduct the business effectively. So in our mind, what we really see it as, to make sure there's maximum security, you need to have trusted content as well as trusted sender. And we see the entire industry is on a very vast spectrum here. There are ways to implement policies and procedures in place which will ensure a safe communication. But I would tell you that today we see billions of dollars of losses every day. The attackers have moved on from not just relying on malicious attachments and URLs, but also, as you talked about, imposter and social engineering. So while there are a lot of these attack vectors emerging, I want people to know that there are deterministic ways to solve this problem. And it starts with discipline. Starts with discipline around authentication, starts with discipline around making sure we have the right safeguards in place to scan the content before it gets delivered.
Yes, and also what about user training? I mean, people can self-direct a lot of the safety that's required in a large organization.
Right. For any program to have long-term sustainable impact, you want to make sure there is a people, process, technology answer, and user education is paramount, is important. We see that 90% of the malware gets delivered through malicious URLs, and most of those clicks happen within the first hour of it. So I think user education is important. But I would also say that any security program which just relies on end user to do all the heavy lifting is not bound to succeed in the long run. This is where automated at-scale solutions are important backbone of sustainable security.
Okay. And Ping, Optiv has, again, an overall view of this whole thing. And how are you seeing email fit into the general security context of the way organizations are dealing with their total cyber picture?
Well, it's really difficult because, as many have said, email is our primary method of communication, right? It's also our favorite method for attackers to attack an organization. And the problem is, as much education and awareness you give them, you still do need to have technology bound to it, because I can try to teach users to read the headers, double check, but the problem is we are inundated with emails, millions of emails a day, billions, in some organizations, and they one little letter that's off from someone's domain name, someone can read the domain as much as they want, but they're going through their emails quickly. And sometimes now that we're moving towards mobile devices as also being people's primary method of checking their emails while they're on the road or on the bus, whatever, though I would say that those controls are not as robust as if you were at a desktop machine. And you can't restrict everybody to, we quarantine everything, go through your little quarantine list, safe list it, not safe listed. And those lists are also dependent upon how tight are the policies surrounding those lists. So when a company has lax security, or unfortunately a lot of people like to trade in convenience for security, and that's the biggest problem, especially when it comes to email. We want to go fast, we want to be able to check on every device we have. We want people who we supposedly know and trust always to get through because we want those messages. We want to be able to conduct our business. We do things where we always say tag your emails external versus internal so that you can at least trust your internal domain. But even those things can easily be broken, right? So every time we come up with a way to say, be more aware, the attackers come back with a trickier way. They have, it used to be really evident, right? You'd get some Nigerian prince email with misspelled words and bad grammar. Now you can get something from Bank of America or the IRS that looks completely legit. It's the right logo. It looks like it comes from the right domain. It has your name in it. It has all sorts of personal information because how many data breaches have we seen in the last year alone? And they're very, very difficult to identify. So in the context of security, it is actually getting more difficult to secure it, right? Just training general users to be more aware. Before they would be more easily spotted. Now we actually have difficulty identifying legitimate emails from fake emails. And I can have two of them sitting right next to one another and going through all the headers, looking at all the backcode, and even for someone like me who I look at these emails day in, day out, it's very difficult to identify.
Yeah, I'm getting that right now from an ISP that long ago took over an ISP, which then swallowed a third ISP, and they're saying, you got to change your settings, and I don't know if they're really contacting me or not. So I guess this operates at the individual and the organizational level. And that idea of the authentication of the sender, that indicates that there are different motivations. For example, when you got the Nigerian prince type of email, and they still come occasionally, you're going to send money somewhere, or if it was the case of some interesting attachment, that was the insertion for malware, because you can embed these things in JPEGs and PDFs and all sorts of things. But the latest kind of iteration of this imposter implies that it's organizational data that you would normally send to the person that ostensibly sent you that email. That's kind of a new twist on all of this. And so I guess let me ask you, Sean, what types of motivations are you seeing creeping into email attacks that might not have been there earlier?
Well, a lot of it is for an entity, be it nation state or crimeware organization, to actually get a foothold on the network. So they want access to your data, whether it's, in our case, correspondence to Congress or copyrighted information, anything that can be monitorized, someone's going to want. So we see attacks that range from the clumsy, hey, click on this link, all the misspellings, to something that I would look at and say, as a librarian, I'm going to click on this. This is something that's so enticing, and then trying to play that game of, oh, it's Christmas time. Let's send out all the alerts saying, by the way, if you're not expecting anything from Amazon, that email probably isn't from Amazon. Or IRS around tax time, we do the same thing. Hey, that email might not be. So we do have to rely on the end users at least sometimes, as well as a lot of security controls. But we're finding, as everyone has actually said, with the reliance on email, things like blocking password-protected zips, which prevents a lot of attacks, is great, except for everyone who has a legitimate need for it. And we have other federal agencies and other commercial clients that's how they trade their protected information via password-protected zip, and we can't block that because that's a delay in work, and it could be either something that a copyright holder needs an answer on, and copyright has to respond to that. So we have to be flexible, but we're seeing a lot of different financial and industrial type motivations when they come to sending attacks.
Cameron, it sounds as if where false positive is where the danger, now false negatives threaten to impede the operation of organizations because of the way Sean just described it.
When we tend to think that email, what we send, is going to be delivered, and that and using it as a file transfer, often what we need to do is figure out what the core need is and maybe set up some other service such that it can facilitate the need. So if there's a desire to share large files or a set of sensitive information, it may be the case that email is not the best kind of transactional interaction to solve this issue. Because otherwise you are going to play a game of your security administrators trying to figure out, okay, you need access to encrypted zips, or we automatically block those, or we ensure that any password protected files that we're not going to deliver those. So it can become a battle of what's the right approach here. I think if you look holistically at your user, at their needs, it may be the case that maybe email isn't the best solution for that particular use case.
But then again, there's still another type of case, Bhagwat. Suppose I'm posing and I get in with the right return address seemingly, and I'm the president of Proofpoint, and hey, where are you going on vacation? Where will you be parking your car? Can we help you out in some way, or that type of thing? I'm just making this up. But that's the kind of new attack where you say, oh yeah, we're going to XYZ, we're leaving on this flight, and suddenly someone has a whole lot of information that could lead to a robbery or stealing your car or gosh knows what. I mean, is that what we're seeing also?
We are beginning to see that. I think it's really interesting.
Tell me, what are the birthdays of all the people in your department?
And today it's actually easier than ever before with the rise of social media. You can actually find a lot of information about the organization, about the org structure, as well as public appearances. In an event like that, also you could easily find out. I mean, there are a couple of things we see. One is that 9 out of 10 advanced attacks come through email. Not because it's easy, but because it's effective. This goes back to the point of digital trust being the paramount thing at play. Second thing, again, on the good side is also email is the most effective place to stop the attacks as well. If you look at a kill chain, the further down the chain you go from network to email to endpoints, by the time it goes further down, the damage is largely done. It's very, very expensive for organizations to actually clean up. Now, if we come back to the point around imposter, we see many different ways that people pretend to be your trusted advisor or be someone who they're not. Sometimes they would actually have a different reply to address. Sometimes they would have a different display name appear where the actual email address is something different. But it is very easy to hijack somebody's domain and download a spoofer from the web to do that. So we see all sort of these attacks. We do also see quarter to quarter attackers change tactics, because they want to keep it fresh. They would use display name spoofing in one, and the domain spoofing in others. And the new thing that we see from time to time also is that they would insert themselves in the middle of a communication. So it's not the first time I would send you an email, hey Tom, what your plans are. I would say, hey, as we discussed last time, pursuant to our conversation, and they would actually have entire, sometimes a fake email communication. So again, all the ways to build trust. And we see that attackers then utilize that to not only gain access to the individuals, sometimes it is to get monetary damage, but sometimes it is to get access to information, which is critical to your organization.
Okay, on that note, we're going to get to you, Ping, right after this break, but we need to take a break right now that we've admired the problem now here for some time here. This discussion is Protecting Email, the Cyber Weapon of Choice, sponsored by Optiv and Proofpoint here on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com.